Welcome back. This is part 2 of this lesson. We're going to continue immediately from the end of part 1, so let's get started. Now this is an overview of all of the different categories of instances, and then for each category, the most popular or current generation types that are available. Now I've created this with the hope that it will help you retain this information. So this is the type of thing that I would generally print out or keep an electronic copy of and refer to constantly as we go through the course. By doing so, whenever we talk about a particular size and type and generation of instance, if you refer to the details and notes column, you'll be able to start making a mental association between the type and then what additional features you get. So for example, if we look at the general purpose category, we've got 3 main entries in that category. We've got the A1 and M6G types, and these are a specific type of instance that are based on ARM processors. So the A1 uses the AWS designed Graviton ARM processor, and the M6G uses the Generation 2, so Graviton 2 ARM-based processor. And using ARM-based processors, as long as you've got operating systems and applications that can run under that architecture, they can be very efficient. So you can use smaller instances with lower cost and achieve really great levels of performance. The T3 and T3A instance types, they're burstable instances. So the assumption with those type of instances is that your normal CPU load will be fairly low and you have an allocation of burst credits that allows you to burst up to higher levels occasionally, but then return to that nominally low CPU level. So this type of instance, T3 and T3A, are really good for machines which have low normal loads with occasional bursts, and they're a lot cheaper than the other type of general purpose instances. Then we've got M5, M5A and M5N. So M5 is your starting point, M5A uses the AMD architecture, whereas normal M5s just use Intel, and these are your steady state general instances. So if you don't have a bursty requirement, if you're running a certain type of application server which requires consistent steady state CPU, then you might use the M5 type. So maybe a heavily used Exchange email server that runs nominally at 60% CPU utilization, that might be a good candidate for M5. But if you've got a domain controller or an email relay server that normally runs maybe at 2-3% with occasional burst up to 20 or 30 or 40, then you might want to run a T-type instance. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. We've got the compute optimized category with the C5 and C5N, and they're good for media encoding, scientific modeling, gaming servers, general machine learning. Memory optimized, so we start off with R5 and R5A. If you want to use really large in-memory applications, you've got the X1 and the X1E. If you want the highest memory of all AWS instances, you've got the high memory series. You've got the Z1D, which comes with large memory and NVMe storage. Then accelerated computing, these are the ones that come with these additional capabilities. So the P3 type and G4 type, those come with different types of GPUs. So the P type is great for parallel processing and machine learning. The G type is kind of okay for machine learning and much better for graphics intensive requirements. You've got the F1 type, which comes with field programmable gate arrays, which is great for genomics, financial analysis, and big data, anything where you want to program the hardware to do specific tasks. You've got the Inf1 type, which is relatively new, custom designed for machine learning, so recommendation, forecasting, analysis, voice, conversation, anything machine learning related, look at using that type. And then storage optimized. So these come with high speed local storage, and depending on the type you pick, you can get high throughput or maximum I/O or somewhere in between. So keep this somewhere safe, print it out, keep it electronically, and as we go through the course and use the different type of instances, refer to this and start making the mental association between what a category is, what instance types are in that category, and then what benefits they provide. Now again, don't worry about memorizing all of this for the exam. You don't need it. I'll draw out anything specific that you need as we go through the course, but just try to get a feel for which letters are in which categories. If that's the minimum that you can do, if I can give you a letter like the T type or the C type or the R type, if you can try and understand and mentally associate which category that goes into, that'll be a great step. And there are ways we can do this. We can make these associations. So C stands for compute, R stands for RAM, which is a way for describing memory. We've got I, which stands for I/O, D, which stands for dense storage, G, which stands for GPU, P, which stands for parallel processing. There's lots of different mind tricks and mental association that we can do. And as we go through the course, I'll try and help you with that. But as a minimum, either print this out or store it somewhere safe and refer to it as we go through the course. The key thing to understand though is how picking an instance type is specific to a particular type of computing scenario. So if you've got an application that requires maximum CPU, look at compute optimized. If you need memory, look at memory optimized. If you've got a specific type of acceleration, look at accelerated computing. Start off in the general purpose instance types and then go out from there as you've got a particular requirement to. Now, before we finish up, I did want to demonstrate two really useful sites that I refer to constantly. I'll include links to both of these in the lesson text. The first one is the Amazon documentation site for Amazon EC2 instance types. This gives you a full overview of all of the different categories of EC2 instances. You can look in a category, pick a particular family and generation of instance, so T3, and then in there you can see the use cases that this is suited to, any particular features, and then a list of each instance size and exactly what allocation of resources that you get, and then any particular notes that you need to be aware of. So this is definitely something you should refer to constantly, especially if you're selecting instances to use for production usage. This other website is something similar. It's ec2instances.info, and it provides a really great sortable list which can be filtered and adjusted with different attributes and columns, which give you an overview of exactly what each instance provides. So you can either search for a particular type of instance, maybe a T3, and then see all of the different sizes and capabilities of T3. As well as that, you can see the different costings for those instance types. So Linux on demand, Linux reserved, Windows on demand, Windows reserved, and we'll talk about what this reserved column is later in the course. You can also click on columns and show different data for these different instance types. So if I just scroll down, you can see which offer EBS optimization, you can see which operating systems these different instances are compatible with. You've got a lot of options to manipulate this data. I find this to be one of the most useful third-party sites. I always refer back to this when I'm doing any consultancy. So this is a really great site. And again, it will be linked in the lesson text. So definitely, as you're going through the course, experiment and have a play around with this data and just start to get familiar with the different capabilities of the different types of EC2 instances. With that being said though, that's everything I wanted to cover in this lesson. You've done really well. I know it's been a lot of theory, but it will come in handy in the exam and real world production usage. So go ahead, complete this video, and when you're ready, you can join me in the next.